to start. There we go. It's been a long time. Sorry. Good evening. We are here to discuss and approve the Pennsylvania Park Walkway project.
You have the agenda memo in your packet that was written for this meeting to tell you that this is the chance. The design committee has looked at this and they gave some input to Beckett and Rader. Tim Knudsen is here. I think all of you have met Tim before. He's been before on other projects. It was just a little background. It was February of 2021, when the board that some of you were here at that point agreed to help fund the project of this walkway path through the park to the tune of $50,000. This is part of the match that the city had to put up to get the grant. And it was decided that parking would put up 50, the general fund would put up 50, and Parks and Rec would put up 50 for the $150,000 match. So I did get a couple of comments. People emailed me when they found about this meeting and saying, well, we don't know if we want to spend our money and that's not the issue tonight. The decision to spend this money has already been made, and the grant has already been received and approved, and all the plans are ready. And what the idea tonight is, I'll just read you the quote from the meeting. The minutes from the meeting in 2021, it said a motion was made by then Marshall Rashid, and not Justin, he's here from the design committee tonight, to contribute funds up to $50,000 to the city of Petoskey's Pennsylvania Park sidewalk widening project, with a caveat that the final plan would be vetted by the design committee and finally approved by the DMB. It was seconded by McNeil and all were in favor. So Parks and Rec is ready to do this project this fall. I think they're talking about late August date, and they do need to go out for bids now in order to get the people to be available to work on the project later this year. So that's the need for the special meeting. And Tim is here tonight, and he's going to walk you through the final concept, which I'll be interested to see too.
Are we on the agenda?
That's my introduction to what we're going to do, and the only thing we're going to do tonight is this one thing.
Oh, we're not doing 2020.
No,
Gotcha.
this is a special meeting just for this one. We're still going to have to meet again in March, so I'm sorry, but we will.
Okay,
We're not doing that.
I thought this was pushed
No.
along. Okay.
No, it was not. You're welcome.
I had the same question, John.
Well, no, I will bite my tongue. No, I could jokingly say the packet was sent out with the agenda that had just this one item on it, but I won't do that. Okay.
I have an application.
Oh.
Okay.
Tim, you ready?
Hi, so I'm Tim Knudsen from Beckett and Rader. I'm a landscape architect working out of our office. We're on Howard Street. Have been working with Kendall and the city on this project since, I want to say, towards the end of 2020. And then before me, John Beckett came up with the original concept. So I just kind of want to run everybody through the process that has taken us to this point, and then we can take a look at the final to this point drawings that we have for the north and south block of Penn Park. Okay. So see if we can get this to go. Okay. So those of you who don't know, this is the third segment of the Petoskey Downtown Greenway. The first segment being from Bay Street to Bayview, which was finished in 2012. The second segment from Mitchell Street to Emmett Street, which was wrapped up in 2018. The preliminary plans for this project were actually completed in 2021. Now, this project just involves the sidewalk on the west side of the park that fronts the businesses on both the north and south block. We've intentionally focused on just that portion, understanding that Parks and Rec and the city have maybe bigger plans to take a look at Penn Park as a whole and things that may need to be improved within Penn Park. So we're just concentrating on that walk from north to south along the west side. Once we completed preliminary plans and an estimate for the purposes of the grant submission, city council met and approved the grant app as they need to do before we submitted in spring 2022. And then towards fall of 2023, state legislature finally got around to approving the grant award that was recommended at the beginning of 2023. So that fall 2023 is when we started. Actually, I should back up. We started spring of 2023 with schematic designs. We were prepared to dive into design development when that grant award came around. So we did some work prior to fall 2023. Shared some plans with the design committee for input. And we've been working on design development, final design, and construction documentation since then. Intending to bid and construct the project. That should say fall 2024. We're well past the spring start time for construction. So a couple other things playing into that. We wanted to try to spare downtown the disruption of a spring start or a summer start. So this gets people in and out of town for the most part, and then we can start the project. So going to our next slide. The main objective is we're really to increase pedestrian space and accessibility. So we know that the sidewalk along those two blocks on which businesses front is narrower than the street frontage sidewalks elsewhere in town. And also for some of these businesses, it's their only entrance. So the decision was taken to widen that walk from 9 to 14 feet to allow for pedestrian travel, to allow for merchandising, marketing, placing tables out on the walk. As happens throughout the rest of downtown. There are some areas where that sidewalk does have a cross slope that exceeds 2%, not by much, but that's the point at which it's deemed inaccessible. We live in a town with lots of topography, so we know how reality kind of plays into that, and that we can only do as good as we can when it comes to grades. So this would give us improved pedestrian accessibility, increased width, some increased accessible picnic opportunities. Right now, there's really nowhere where somebody with a wheelchair or a walking deficiency can make their way to a picnic table close to that walk, sit down and enjoy a meal. The other is to improve the stormwater condition, especially on the south block, but also on the south end of the north block. We know we have some standing water when we get storm events, and we want to try to take care of that, especially if we're going to widen that sidewalk and improve and increase pervious surface. Additionally, with regard to stormwater conditions, so many of the buildings, I believe all of the buildings in the south block have their roof stormwater piped to sanitary. So part of this project places a storm main with connections to the building that would allow a business owner to make that final connection and separate their stormwater from sanitary when they're able to do so. So that just takes a burden off the sanitary system and sends the stormwater where it's supposed to go. One other thing we wanted to do to accommodate that surface stormwater within the park is to add some infiltration channels within the green belt, not underneath the sidewalk, and I'll explain why in a moment. But just to get that water to infiltrate into the grade rather than sitting on the surface and ponding on top of the sod and the thatch layer and compacted soil that associated with that sod. Okay, and some additional elements were included in the grant application, including seat walls. At this point in time, we thought we were going to need seat walls for most of the length of the walk because the grade from the park descends, down to that walk. To extend it out into that grade, we're going to be cutting into that slope a little bit, but we found a way around that. Frankly, the seat walls could serve as a barrier for people getting into and out of the park from the sidewalk. So the decision was taken to get rid of those, but those were in the original grant application. Picnic tables, pervious pavers or pavement, and that can be, when I say pavement, there is a material called pervious concrete right now. It's nothing we would recommend in a downtown setting though, because the aesthetic just isn't I should say, the aesthetic and the durability to start to the point where they can withstand a downtown setting. Bike loops that would match the existing bike loops in the downtown district, and then likewise lighting. We're talking about the Shepherd's Hook lights, the smaller lights within the park, but also at a reduced height. If you find yourself in the park, take a look around at the lighting in the east side of the park, or the upper side, which would be east of the rails versus the west side. The lights on the east side, I want to say that hood comes down to about 10 or 11 feet above the surface. The lights along the walk on the west side, that hood is another couple feet higher. You get a much more intimate feeling, kind of a special feeling walking under those shorter lights than you do under the taller ones. Taller ones seem out of scale next to the building facade, so we're proposing replacing those taller lights with a shorter light, matching the amount of light we're throwing now, but just bringing that elevation down to create a more intimate space.
Excuse me.
Yes.
We had talked about a lot about lighting.
You might.
Excuse me, we had talked about lighting at one point. Were you considering that lighting that we had, I mean, this was about 2 years ago, I think.
No, 4 maybe.
Oh, really? That long?
Study.
That walk.
Did that walk around?
Yes.
Okay,
We did pitch some ideas regarding connecting string lights from the posts to the building,
mhm,
kind of a zigzag pattern down that whole thoroughfare. I think there were some reasons why parks and maybe DPW thought that might be a challenge or problematic, so we just stuck with keeping those lights that we have now, but bringing them closer to the walk and bringing the hood down closer to the walk.
okay, I was just curious.
So this image depicts, and I apologize, we had to dump the previous one that was a before, but this image depicts an after shot, and this, I believe, was also submitted with the grant application and presented to council, just to show what it would look like to add that 4 feet of sidewalk that we're proposing. The age of this photo is apparent because this enclosure for dining hasn't been used for quite some time. They've got a nice open enclosure here, but just reinforces, I guess, how narrow this walk can feel, especially on a really busy day, and how much just 4 feet of pavement can make things aesthetically open up and functionally provide some more opportunities. Okay, I'm gonna skip this slide. These two drawings at the top are the original grant drawings that John Beckett submitted with the grant. I'll run through them really quickly, but it looks like there's a formatting issue with our two PowerPoint programs. This is the sidewalk here, which is proposed to go from 9 to 14 feet. So we're adding 5 feet in width. But what you can't see is a seat wall that runs the whole length of that walk, and that was intended to bridge the grade. Before we had a survey and knew what we could do to manipulate grade to not need that seat wall. Also shown are these bump outs here. These are circular in this design. There's one, and then 1, 2, 3 here. Those all host picnic tables, accessible tables. The reason they're bumped out is just to be able to pull those off of the pavement edge to allow that sidewalk to continue to serve as a thoroughfare. One other thing that that's shown here, but we can't see in the slide, is that on the inside edge of that cheek wall is a row of pervious pavers. And the reason those pervious pavers were needed is because that walk is going to drain away from the buildings towards the park, hit that cheek wall and stop. So we need to find a way to get it into the soil. So at that point in time, we were showing pervious pavers along both blocks on the inside edge of a seat wall that ran the length of the this is a before and after shot looking south from Lake Street. So again, you get the impression of what the added width does for us, even when we pop in planters and umbrellas and some other furnishings and some tables on this side.
Can you clarify something for me, Tim? It is the idea to take previous pavers out of this project
Yes. Yeah.
completely?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'll
Okay.
get to that point in a second.
Cool.
There
All right.
are really good reasons to do so. So this was the next set of plans. I believe we presented these in spring 2023. So these were the plans to which the comments that you read responded. This is the south block, so chamber building is here. We start off the south block with an enlarged plaza area. Anyone familiar with the park knows that this is probably the most congested part of the park, the south block where we meet the chamber building and the restrooms and so forth. There is also a grade challenge here where this sidewalk currently really warps. So it's got a steep pitch that kind of pushes you this way. Widening that walk and widening even further for a plaza with tables is just going to exacerbate that situation. So we split this walk into two and placed a curbed planter in between this walk and this route to the restrooms. And I'll show you an elevation to help explain that a little better. Once we get further into the presentation, this seat wall remains. A couple tables here and one table here. Our light poles are shown here with these heavier black dots. And then these darker panels are that pervious paving within the sidewalk. So this is our, our north block, and then just showing a conceptualization of that sidewalk going straight from the Elks Lot to the alley, knowing that if we do this as the crow flies, it's going to require a set of steps to bridge this slope right here. And if we want to make this walk accessible, we have to stretch it out into a ramp to do so. Okay, so we got a set of comments from this plan review. Can you read those again?
The ones we talked about this afternoon. I can. The minutes from the design committee after they met. Hold on, I didn't know I was going to be asked for this. The design committee suggested. But this was in your packet after the design committee met, but I'll just sum up the last paragraph of it. After discussion, committee members asked that a plan for bike racks be included, that the materials for the proposed seat walls be identified, that the possibility of custom tables be explored, that the path from the Elks Lot across the park to Shoppers Lane / alley be included and designed sensitively, and that the piece or pieces of black walnut that had been saved when the storm, Tim tells me this will come later, but when the storm took out several trees a few years ago, would be incorporated into something. Is that what you needed?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
A quick question. So that path doesn't exist right now, does it? I'm trying to remember. No, it's new. Got it.
Yes.
Got it.
And I can
Nice.
explain the difference between this version that we're looking at on the screen and the one that Justin indicated on the bottom right there of the two boards. But it's this has been an issue for a while now. People tend to make that walk regardless of the sidewalk being not there, and we end up with a muddy kind of goat track and people slipping down that hill. So on the other hand, to get an accessible walk, something that somebody with a walking disability or a wheelchair can navigate, you really do have to stretch that out to get rid of that slope right there. I mentioned previously that we had an elevation looking from this end of the walk down towards the chamber building so that we could show you a better depiction of this plaza that we're talking about at the south end. So that's what we're describing as you're walking towards the chamber building. This is a chamber building in the background. This would be the seat wall and a light behind it. A bump out with a table. You can see these folks sitting at the picnic table. If you look very closely, you can see a step behind that. That step ends at a planter. So this planter splits the walk into a direction that takes you towards Howard Street or to the restrooms. And again, the reason we wanted to split that walk is because the walk does warp pretty steeply right here and creates not an unsafe situation, but a situation that could be improved to get accessibility to the restrooms.
Is that gonna be a problem with a step for handicapped people?
No, because we're flattening out that warp. So if you're like if you're in a wheelchair, for example, you'd take this route.
Okay,
right?
okay,
But it should be easier than it is now.
okay.
It's a good question. Any other questions on the elevation?
What, is there a post on that corner? Right out at the tip of Flatiron? Isn't there a big pole or something?
There's a pole, there's also a drinking fountain right here that would be at the head of that planter on the, not on this side, but on the back side. I believe there's.
I couldn't remember if that was attached to the building or if it's just freestanding.
Yes.
Actually,
What kind of?
It's, I don't think it's. You get me.
You like, yeah, you go between it, yeah.
It's that one, right?
The sign, I think.
Yeah.
Just.
Oh, there it is, okay.
Well, that's on their property.
I'm not sure if that.
I'm not sure,
exists
but-
anymore.
Oh, no, it
It does
exists,
exist,
Yeah.
okay.
but it would be grandfathered in. I don't know that it would be.
Okay, that
I
explains something
don't-
else.
I don't interpret the sign ordinance, but my guess is it wouldn't be approved today.
So there is gonna be a drop off on the grass through that seating wall, basically.
That's just here,
That's right.
just right here where that little S curve is, yeah. So all of this walk will just meet lawn will right up to that walk. So the way we were able to achieve that here, really in the north half of the park, the grade just isn't that steep, and on the north half of the north block, it actually continues to drain away from the walk. So we've got some relief there, but not on this block. So what we did is we studied the topography. You can see these are 1 foot contours here. So when they're closer together, our grade is steeper. When they're further apart, our grade is flatter. So we just said, we don't want a seat wall here. We want people to be able to walk between the lawn and the walk and vice versa. But we also don't want to build in a steep slope. So if we can grade this to meet that edge and maintain grades no steeper, certainly gentler than what we have in this area, let's try to achieve it. And so we were able to do so. So this slope will be a little steeper than it is now. It'll approximate the steepness of what's above it. Still not as quite as steep as what you see where this sidewalk meets the rails. If you're walking this stretch anytime soon, just take a look at how steep this section is here. We won't be reaching that point of steepness anywhere along this walk.
So you, Tim, I'm sorry, am I allowed to speak? Or is this just for us?
Go ahead and ask a question, Justin.
Are you saying you made it steeper in some sections
Oops.
to create a more level place where it meets the sidewalk in the section closest to the sidewalk? You let it be steeper
Yes.
farther up and then smoothed it out where it meets the sidewalk.
Yeah, and thank you for asking that, because we don't want to bring that grade right down to this end, right up against the walk, or we're gonna have water sitting there. We have to create a little flat area beyond the walk that water can flow from the walk into that lawn area, and then I'll explain what it does from there.
I have one other question. Sorry.
No,
When you're extending the walk, you're keeping all the concrete there currently and then just building out from that? Or is all that concrete come up?
it's all coming up.
Okay, that's so it's all gonna be new concrete.
Yes,
Okay,
and that's another good question, because,
it was hard to tell with
yeah,
different colors. I didn't know if if it was existing and adding or.
exactly, and what that removal facilitates is getting that storm line in the ground that'll let
Oh,
business
that'll look
owners
nice.
eventually connect up to storm. I think right now they're just gonna place the line, place stubs to the building and put a cap on the end so that I don't think the city's forcing anybody to hook up to it. Just when that business owner is ready, they can do so. But yeah, we'll have to pull up the whole walk to make that happen. So I should have flipped to this slide. Input we heard from the design committee was to space the picnic table pads uniformly. If you look at the arrangements we had here and here, both blocks show picnic tables favoring the middle and south side of the blocks. And we can say that's maybe where they belong now, but we don't know that they're always going to belong there. And things that don't change along that walk that maybe make those tables want to be somewhere else. So we took direction to space those picnic table pads uniformly. Actually kind of worked out because the lights are also spaced out uniformly, so they both kind of follow the same rhythm. That should say minimize or eliminate seat walls, which I think we're able to do. Site furnishings should be consistent with this existing downtown furnishings or consistent with design language of our existing downtown site furnishings. And the reason I phrase that way is because we're introducing a picnic table. We don't have a Petoskey picnic table yet, but we will now. And then lastly, add some canopy trees to help rebuild Penn Park tree canopy, especially in the south end that we lost in the storm a few years ago. What I didn't capture was also reusing the wood that's been stocked from the walnut trees that came down. And I guess I would recommend that wood gets purposed for the larger park, for whatever improvement happens within the park. We think that wood should be certainly used and not done away with. I'm just not sure there's a place for it up in this sidewalk. Also shared the plans with DPW and Parks. Again, just including that stormwater main under the sidewalk for future connection of building roof systems. And then DPW brought up the issue of a pervious paver system and what consequences might be if we were to infiltrate stormwater close to building foundations. It was something that I hadn't really thought of prior to helping John put the plan together. I asked John Beckett, he said, yeah, it's probably something we should think about. Talking to Mike a little bit more, I know Mike was a little bit leery of the idea, and then I know DPW does a fair amount of work every spring to level the pavers, and introducing 2 blocks of new pavers they felt would be just an added challenge to getting downtown ready for spring every spring. But I think the concern about stormwater infiltration that close to basements is what really pushed us away from pervious pavers. That doesn't mean we're not infiltrating stormwater though. And I'll explain that when we look at the construction plans. So these are construction plans showing the south block first. These are also shown on the 2 boards to the left of the screen. But what we ended up with was a walk that's widened from 9 to 14 feet. So this is all new sidewalk. We have our tables evenly spaced in 3s, 3 on this block, and then 3 on the north block. The only stretch of seat wall is this piece here. And then this is just a curbed planter here. So we would imagine planting this with a perennial that gets some size so that people don't walk over it, see it as a divider between a stairway and a ramp when they approach it. This white area here, we probably could have chosen a better color, but we just wanted to indicate the project limits. This is all lawn. So this would appear as a continuous pane of lawn once this is all restored. Lights are shown here in a tighter spacing than we have now. Trash receptacles here and bike rack. Oh, so we have on this block, we have a bike hoop on this end. Actually, I think it's right there. And then we had proposed bike hoops on the end of the Flatiron building. And now I'm realizing why Mike suggested we take those out. 1, because that sign is there. 2, because there's a pretty strong need right here at Chamber Building. And there has been a portable rack placed there in the past. So the idea was to place 2 or 3 loops right there that could stay in place, that would be permanent. And lastly, our shade trees, if I remember right, these are a new hybrid elm. That's a Kentucky coffee tree. That is an American linden, and this is a copper beech. Hopefully, most of you know that beech right here that's purple, the tree with purple, kind of copper colored foliage. That's also a copper beech. That tree is not going to live forever, so it'd be nice to maybe get one growing at the south end behind this dining pop out here.
Excuse me, I'm full of questions.
Yeah.
You know, I know it's probably not for this project, but has there been any discussion about that being a heated sidewalk?
That
Yes,
was,
Oh, yeah, no, because I mean, it's been an ongoing discussion. I just didn't know if there was any thought taken into that. Or why not? Or, you know, if there is or isn't, so.
I hate to put it in such a simple way as cost prohibitive, but I think it was at the end of the exercise, I think the challenges were cost and space, and the question of space was just trying to find a common area where we could place a boiler and the equipment to run all that. Either on public property, which, you know, we're probably gonna sacrifice parking spaces to do that, or on private property.
What would be the cost of that? If it was done for just that stretch, what would the cost be? Estimated.
I couldn't even guesstimate. I could get you a number tomorrow morning, but I couldn't guesstimate.
Guesstimates. Between $1 and $1 million, between 500,000 and $1 million.
Don't quote me on this, but I don't think it's gonna cost, it would cost you more than 250,000. But the challenge is still gonna be finding a place to host that equipment. Yeah. So,
Can you explain that? I mean, when you say a parking space, so it could be like way out, far away, somewhere on Lake Street, possibly. I mean, I'm not trying to
yeah,
pick a designated place, but how big is this? Is it the size of a parking space or? I mean,
if I remember right, it was about the size, the equipment was about the size of a dumpster, so maybe a
Okay.
6 foot square.
had no idea.
But it needs some, you know, it needs some space to work around also.
Mhm.
And it has to be within the block. So I think the
Okay.
way that the study was done is that we either had a block by block system, or maybe we combined and had 2 blocks per system. Yeah, but that unit has to be in fairly close proximity to where the sidewalks are that you're eating.
Because there's a hedge with utilities along Lake Street, like
near the gazebo.
right next to it, across the rail from the gazebo.
Yes, yeah. So that's the only answer I can give you regarding snow melt.
So I would just add to that, you know, this board has talked many times over the years about anytime sidewalk came up, it should be inserted underneath it, and this, you know, widening it, that's more sidewalk to clear. If at $250,000, I can't give you numbers off the top of my head either, but it would pay for itself at some point because you wouldn't have to maintain it.
Yeah, that was the only reason why I brought that up, because we had talked about something's ripped up to go for
it.
exercise of that.
One other thing that I didn't mention shown on this slide, well, a few things. So this darker area of concrete is what we call exposed aggregate. Because we're not doing pavers and we really don't like recommending stamped concrete, and I'm happy to tell you why if you'd like to know. We're recommending a strip of exposed ag concrete. I can show you what that looks like. Let's see. Right there. So this is something you see in parks pretty often, especially state parks. It's starting to show up at our rest stops in the state. And you do see it in urban areas, but the reason we proposed it, one is to just break up what it's going to be 14 feet of sidewalk width. And another is to give that edge that runs along the park maybe a less developed, more natural feel, that kind of have this pebbly appearance. Concrete contractors don't like to do it because it's more work. Concrete contractors like Ryan Brothers can pull it off really well. And talking to Mike and Jason, they have no apprehension about introducing exposed aggregate into a city sidewalk.
And what about the stamped? Why don't you like the stamped?
Stamped is really hard to match, just because you're gonna get a certain pattern. And the stamp that makes that pattern originally may not be able to be laid down in the same place when you cut that piece of pavement out and repair it. If you're coloring the concrete, that's like another, I guess, dimension of difficulty trying to match it. Exposed aggregate, the key is to have a good handle on the stone mix that is used to add to the concrete surface to get that pebbly appearance. If you start looking at exposed ag, you'll notice it comes out in a lot of different colors. If you're in the Western UP, it's a lot redder because of the aggregates they have to work with. But as long as you pay attention to the aggregates that you're using, it's easy to match a pane. You can just cut it at the joint and replace it with new exposed ag. It's also slip resistant and pretty tough. So this is our north block. The big difference between the north and south, let me back up here.
Wait, quick question on that. Is the durability of it the same as a?
Yes.
Okay.
If it's done right, we have to have a good contractor to put it in. If we, fortunately, the city has pre-qualifications for flat work contractors, so we're in good hands.
I had a quick question about elements. You mentioned garbage cans in one location. Is that the only location?
They're just they're just at the north end of each block. And there was a reason that I have to ask Kendall why we
Yeah.
don't have the south block, but
Right.
unless we don't have a pair,
I mean,
like at the chamber building now, I think we probably would need
because I just don't think that's enough,
somewhere on this one too.
right? Like somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, and we could drop some right next to that
Do you know if the current,
in their table. Right there.
currently there are two receptacles in the park. In the park,
Just in the park period.
right, on that western half, from the rails down to the sidewalk.
Okay,
Can you, I think around one of them, there are, two park benches,
yes.
Yep.
kind of like
It's
behind,
in the middle.
Yeah, down on the
North
north
Park used
end
to
of
be.
the south block.
right, exactly. Do you know, will this project be displacing those?
Yes, yeah, those. Kendall has said he's gonna pull out. Let's see if I can point to them. There's a set of benches on this end, but then also that set where these trees will go.
Right,
And he said he's gonna pull those out. Yes,
Dog bags.
you can't have too many.
I know.
No matter what
dog
Kendall says.
size, we're probably gonna
I
need
hate to
them.
bring that up. I see Shane's laughing. We are dealing with that right now in other parts of the city.
And right there, right there.
I would rather see too many than not enough because people won't go back. You know.
Yeah.
Do you know a supplier at all?
Right. No, I think the city has a good supplier. There just need to be more. I do have a question about the aggregate.
Yeah.
Because that is going to provide more of an uneven surface than a sidewalk. Will that not, if that's on a new part of the sidewalk that people will be walking on, is that going to be difficult to walk, say, in heels? Or what's the reason for the aggregate? Why, is it just a look thing? Can it?
It's just an aesthetic to break
It's
up
an
the
aesthetic.
appearance, yeah.
Couldn't you just do colored cement there rather than?
You could, and it's not gonna be any more difficult because it's gonna be a separate pour anyway. So you could just do instead of aggregate, you just do a colored
Aggregate
strip.
is in between the sidewalk itself.
It's, no, it's the last, it's the outer edge.
Next to the grass.
Exactly, you got
Okay.
it, yep, but that could be colored.
I mean, that way, somebody in a wheelchair, somebody, kids, I don't know if they would trip on it or not.
I was thinking a stroller buggy might rattle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's, I mean, it's an accessible surface, but I think colored concrete could achieve the same purpose, you know, to break up that 14-foot wide span.
I think we have a public comment.
I would just tint it like a darker neutral color.
Justin?
I was just gonna say, there are very few elements to this that are aesthetic, most of them are practical.
Functional, yeah.
Solving functional and practical problems. I agree, it is aesthetically pleasing. And, there's one spend a lot of time in Santa Fe, you see it everywhere around that town. And it is beautiful. I mean, it really does add texture and interest. And creates less of an urban and industrial feeling. So if it can be, I mean, it really depends on how bumpy the surface is. As I've noticed it, it's really not, you see it, but it really, it's not elevated much at all.
Right.
So a quarter of an inch or something, it's a very small amount. You see the stone, but you can walk on it with a thin soled shoe, you wouldn't really feel it.
Yeah, and and Justin's right, if the center image here isn't a really good representation, but the image here to the right is, but if you look at our rest stops, the state is using a closely graded, what I mean by that, it's only a certain size of pebble. So they don't end up with big chunks in there that stick up, it's maybe a quarter inch and smaller, so it's certainly a possibility to control how rough or how smooth that surface is and still have exposed aggregate.
Tim, can you take us back to the beginning? You had a slide, I think, that really showed that difference in coloring and texture at the very beginning.
Oh, was it this one maybe?
No, it's from a different angle. Keep going. No, is that the beginning?
Yeah.
Yep, okay. There,
Oh,
underneath the
sure.
planters. So I think visually we're overreacting to something that we won't even notice, right? It just subtly enhances the aesthetics, but doesn't, it's not a stark jump out at you event here.
And it's just the outer band, so.
Right.
There's all of this surface, I mean, I'm not suggesting that that's not walkable, but there's all of this, room finish concrete that, if that were a concern, could be used.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, where were we?
So I was gonna take you to the north block, but I want to explain this first and where the stormwater is going, that we were going to infiltrate through pavers, but decided not to because those pavers would be right up against the building. So this walk is all pitching out towards the park. And then as Justin mentioned, that slope doesn't come right down from the park to the edge of the walk. We've got a flat area about the width of this bump out, maybe even a little bit bigger, so maybe 3 or 4 feet wide. So underneath the lawn, for the length of that walk, is a drain tile that sits in, I want to say it's a 1 foot square section of large stone. So if you were to cut a section through here, turn it on its edge and look at it, you would see a big square of stone with a drainage tile in the center that's perforated, so that tile can let water out as well as take it in. What that infiltration trench is what we call it, which is going to be completely below the lawn. You won't see it does, is it accepts the stormwater, gets it down below the surface soil profile where the soils are more, where they'll infiltrate better and gets that water into the ground, which is really the concept of the pervious pavers. We would have had the same infiltration basin or channel underneath those pavers running the length of the walk but underneath the walk, whereas now we've just pushed it away from the building, about 20 feet away from the building and run it along this edge. What if it doesn't infiltrate in time? What if we get such a heavy rain that pipe fills up and just can't infiltrate into the soils fast enough? This end is going to be tied to a storm structure in the street so that if and when this reaches the point of saturation and can't infiltrate, it'll overflow into that storm line and then out into the storm system, so we won't get the flooding that we do on both ends of the walk that we do now. But short of that, it gets all that water into the soils, which is, really the best place to put it rather than sending it into a pipe system. I wanted to make sure I explained that issue of infiltration, that we weren't letting go of it. We were just shifting it to the east. So north block is much longer than the south block. We're still showing 3 picnic tables evenly spaced. This pattern really lent itself well to getting a table close to the downtown offices, which is kind of nice, and right next to that alley, which I think is a good spot for a table also. What's different on this plan from the previous plan is that we're adding that connection to the Elks lot. So this would all be a 6-foot sidewalk, which is the standard in Petoskey. This stretch here would be accessible. It's all accessible, but this stretch here is accessible without handrails, meaning it has a certain slope, but not steep enough to require handrails. When we get to this point, we have a 30-foot ramp. Actually, it's a 25-foot ramp, a landing, and another 25-foot ramp. And then this is all landing up here. So this descends steeply enough to where we need to build in some boulder walls to retain the slopes below and above, and then to place handrail on either side of those ramps. And then we're proposing planting those boulder walls with the same mix of hosta that we plant this walk through the north and south block of the park now with. So we'd have some harmony there and continuity.
So when you say boulder walls, will you be using real boulders or that artificial stuff that see?
I think we would want to use real boulders. Yeah.
And then you could match that rope mortar that you see. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll be watching. If you look in the Elks lot, that boulder wall that's back there,
On
it
the
has
backside,
at the
yeah.
backside has rope mortar molding in between every single rock, and it's something that it's on that wall all the way down past the depot, and it's just very unique. You don't see it every day.
Yeah, it's a different detail, but it's a whole block of it. What else? So this, I probably don't need to show you this, but I'm going to tell you anyway. The storm line here that collects roof drainage and allows people to separate it from sanitary is only needed to this point. So we're taking that storm line and running it this way, connecting to the same structure in the street that the south block will connect to. These buildings north of the alley all send their stormwater out the other side to the stormwater system. So they're all taken care of. We still have the infiltration basin or trench along this entire block here outside of the sidewalk also.
And the upper sidewalk would still exist, right? Isn't there one that
Yes,
goes along
absolutely.
parallel?
Yeah,
Okay,
that upper walk would be, it doesn't show up very well here,
Right.
but it's right through there.
That sidewalk that you're gonna take up there, is that gonna have the same type of aggregate around, or that was gonna be?
Well, we had just shown it plain concrete, but there's no reason it couldn't be exposed ag if we wanted that walk to feel a little bit more less developed, maybe is the term, more natural.
For any of you who don't know, Justin Rashid is on the design committee, and so he's worked with us all the way through, and I know there are some new board members here that might.
Yeah, we've been looking at this sidewalk through the park for a long time, and my concern about it was always that one of the really unique features of that northern stretch of the park Because here you are in the middle of this dense urban downtown, and you have this uninterrupted strip of green. Beautiful, right? With the black walnuts coming up out of this uninterrupted strip of green, and I was always, my concern was always you put a piece of concrete through it, and suddenly you don't have that uninterrupted strip of an oasis in the downtown. And I guess I was persuaded that people need a way to get from the front to that Park Avenue without slipping down a muddy cliff, right? Which some people attempt to do. But my concern now that I hear that, I didn't know there were going to be rails and pads, so there's structures. So the lower part of that, you'll see right over it, right? The lower
Yes,
section.
yeah, this will just be flush with grade. And even this will be built into the slope, but you're right, you're gonna see the railings.
You're gonna see that structure.
And there's a lot going on here. There's a funny looking, people call it a ponderosa pine, but it's not. It's just a pine that lost its top and really I should go, but it's not my.
Well, I know that's, you know,
But there's also
It's
some
character.
electrical infrastructure right here. So where I'm going with that is even sending a direct route like that is problematic because of that tree and because of the electrical infrastructure here.
So that infrastructure has to stay.
So the infrastructure, yeah, and it has to stay
well, I
because
think
it would
it's
just
better.
be
I think
expensive.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
It's just,
But you still end up with elements that are up
are
in
you
the
gonna
air.
end up with, you know, big steel rails and concrete that you see when you look down from Lake Street?
Yeah. And so that ramp is graded, the ramp, when I say ramp, I'm just talking about this section here. That's graded at 8 1/3%, which is the max for period for accessible ramps. We could turn it into a ramp that doesn't need railings, but the length wouldn't quite double, that would be 1/3 again. Because, an accessible walk that doesn't require handrails has to stop at just below 5%. So you go from 5 to 8%, that tells you how much longer that walk's gonna be. So, I mean, that would be my preference too, to get rid of the railings and some of this wall and stretch this out, but then you end up with something that's so long that you wonder if an able-bodied person is gonna use it, and you wonder if somebody who has a physical deficiency because of distance is gonna use it. Because we're making it longer. It's not as steep, but now we've made the length much longer. That's one of the dilemmas we always run into regarding accessible ramps. So if you ask me my opinion, I guess I see this motion happening all the time, but I also hear what Justin's saying. This block is different than the south block. It's less developed. It's a nice big green glade, and we have a few more shade trees in that chunk too. So I'm kind of conflicted about this connection.
I think Justin even brought this up at the design committee, like broken concrete, that grass goes in between instead of a solid path so it will continue the look of the grass.
That's not handicap.
To right over that.
How big of an area is that railing that you're talking about there? Where all the green is right there? How,
You mean how wide is this here?
no, how long? is-
Oh, I'm sorry. About 100 feet.
The whole path,
Yeah, from that end to that end.
so you're
Maybe a
looking
little bit longer.
at 20, 30, 40 feet of railing then?
25.
About 50 feet of railing.
Like a worn path there now.
Is there?
No,
Well, they keep it up pretty well in the summertime, but in the wintertime, it's definitely, you can tell that's exactly where the people walk.
But in the summertime, there's nothing there.
just right.
No, just solid grass, right?
Tim, was there anything else to your presentation?
Just gonna finish up here.
Is that connector an add up to the content?
Yeah, good question. This is an add alternate, as is the exposed aggregate strip here. So we're getting separate pricing on that. We'll be able to say, we don't want to accept that alternate. We just want to go with the base bid.
Yeah,
concrete
roads
for
we
all of
put in
it.
Later.
Certainly, yeah, I think so.
I just don't see people, when I'm down there, I don't see people cutting through that area. Usually they head to the pavement box. And then walk the sidewalk down on either side of the Perry, huh?
I do.
Do you? Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
place to the next.
I'm just gonna say, sitting at that desk for how many years? I've seen a bride fall down there in a dress. I've seen people slip. We've gone out and helped people get up because the grass is wet. And I've seen terrible things happen out there. And people do, they get out of their car, there's an exit from the parking lot. And they just go right down there and they just start, because there's a pay station right there too. It's. Mhm. My friend Bob Gibbs that has spoken before you several times, he fell down it. Oh my God, I was so embarrassed. He was just, and elderly people that,
Elderly people should stay on the sidewalk.
I never thought of the pay station and how maybe that's redirecting people though.
it may be.
If they have to
But
walk to this. end.
There's an opening in the hedge there. It's
Yeah.
clearly a way to get off of the parking lot.
Yeah,
And then you end up on this slippery slope.
and you see it from down below too, as a way to get into the parking lot.
Is there a pay station in the middle?
Yes.
Yeah, so.
And that's right there where the.
Oh, okay,
starts.
okay,
There's nowhere to go.
And a break in the hedge.
Mhm.
yeah,
Remember there's a little plaza there with that little circular.
yes, and the rails
Mhm.
pass right through it right there. But yes, that is an alternate, so we'll get pricing on that. It's not a base bid item. So we can decide to keep it or.
Was
let it
that
go,
everything?
depending on how bids come in.
I'm sorry, was that everything?
Finish up here. Just want to show you the site furnishings, which are no big surprise. We're matching the bike loop that we have downtown, our trash receptacles. Our Shepherd's Hook light, but we don't have a picnic table. None of you would probably believe me if I try to tell you how little the site furnishings business has done with regard to picnic tables, other than just slapping some boards on a metal frame and giving us the picnic table we know and have always had. This is a table from a custom company called Paris Furnishings. The reason we noticed this table is because we saw their bench. We said, that looks a lot like the Petoskey bench. Maybe they have a table that at least has the metal framework. Yeah, like our bench does. And so we found that in the table, but it has this, I'm just gonna say it, this awful square perforated surface for the table and benches. So they agreed to put together a table like this for Petoskey, in which these surfaces would be replaced with wood slats, actually recycled plastic made to look like wood.
Oh, I like what they got better.
So
Yeah,
you
yeah,
like the squares better?
quite a bit, actually.
We could do that. I don't want to show you the tables we chose previously. Well, you saw them.
Yeah.
They are non-starters. Lastly, just our exposed ag. And that's all I had for the presentation.
Great, thank you, Tim. Questions for Tim?
Jennifer, I have one. I think it needs to be made clear. When I see them out there now and they're spray painting along the walk and all of, I know that no trees are supposed to be removed. But are they gonna get so close to those black walnuts that damage is done?
No.
And they're all gonna be fine, every one of them.
We have to. We can't,
Yeah,
we can't mess that up.
okay.
Great question. Thank you.
Because I see I'm happy you're adding some new trees as well, but even that disturbs the soil around those big black walnuts, so. I trust you.
Yeah, that south block, there's a big hole where that, I know, the.
Oh,
area I'm
yes,
talking
yes.
about. I don't even know if it was I think it might have been a maple, but it's just.
Mhm.
But towards the north end, there's just a big blindingly sunny spot. And we have to fill, I think it's those last two trees to the right there on the first one.
Right, those came down in this storm that great big one. Yeah.
We're not planting any more black walnuts?
Not that size.
Well,
There was one in his plan.
there was one in there.
I've asked that question before too.
I mean, they gotta start somewhere.
It does create a monoculture that is prone to disease, but
They're not a nursery tree, so nurseries aren't growing them, and the reason they're not a nursery tree is because they have a really long tap root and they're really difficult to transplant.
Hmm.
You have to start really small. And I'm not trying to knock walnuts because I love them. I think once they're gone in the park, we're gonna have a problem, but the nuts are also toxic, so short of lawn, not much else will grow very healthily next to a walnut. And then there's the litter, but I was gonna say, I think they're working on hybrid walnuts, but I have the wrong species. They're not working on hybrid non-fruiting walnuts.
Other questions or comments? Any discussion?
So are we to pass this?
Yeah,
today?
yes, we're having discussion, asking questions, and then we will have a motion and vote. Justin, do you have any questions or comments?
That was.
All right, thanks for attending.
So the two add-ons would be, you're gonna get estimates on the two add-ons.
Yeah, the two alternates, the exposed ag and the ramp that connects us to the alley.
But,
So we'll be able to identify those costs separately.
so are we going to vote on what's there minus the add-on at this point?
Well, we've already approved $50,000 for the project, so I would assume that any add-on would be taken care of by the city. So we could approve the entire plan, I think, at one time. And if the city decides to just do the original project, we put in the $50,000, they decide to do the add-ons, we're still putting in the $50,000.
Gotcha, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Okay,
so you're saying that you would approve your motion would have to include that you would approve this plan with or without the add-on,
correct.
not pending the add-on.
I would hope though that they look into the heated sidewalk cost. That's not a thing we're voting on, but that's just what's.
I'll, by the end of the day tomorrow, I'll send Becky a
Yeah. It's
cost
just,
for that, for those two blocks.
it may be just like,
Well, we have the per block price from the exercise we did a year ago, right?
So what you're.
I'm sure it hasn't gone down.
What about the top of the alley next to the downtown office, the parking office? Is there a little space right there where you could put a boiler for that?
Well, you know what? That could block the top of that alley, which I guess you would be amazed how many cars come up that alley and they don't want to back up. So they turn and they go on the sidewalk out to the street or drive through the park out to the street. So that would put an end to that.
No, that needs a Hall of Fame, Becky. You gotta get a picture and get that on the wall. That's fantastic. Oh, yeah, there's a good couple of driving Hall of Fames downtown.
Wow.
That's a good idea, then.
I almost did that once. I mean, you tell me a lot, not the.
I'm curious to see if we look at that location, so I have to take that report up and see.
Mhm.
With that. How do we do it with the heated sidewalk consideration?
I think that's a separate conversation.
Yeah.
Cause.
It's a good conversation, I just don't know if city council's gonna have $250,000.
I think
naming rights, somebody will.
Shane will figure it out. I'm not worried. I'll find it.
Shane, thank you.
Sidewalk brought to you by.
John Murphy.
Tell me Shane Moore the sidewalk. His legacy will be the heated sidewalk.
okay. So I make a motion to approve the Pennsylvania Park Walkway project. With
With or without the two.
with or without the additions.
I second that motion.
Wonderful. We have a motion and we have support. Any discussion?
Wait, so that's saying we're just, whatever happens, happens, as far as the additions go?
Again, we've already approved $50,000.
Mhm.
So what we're saying is that we approve the project as presented with the two additions. But if the city should decide not to go ahead with the two additions, we'd still put in the, we're
Right.
still approving the project.
Mhm.
Okay,
So you could put that language in your motion if you want to, Robin.
but
How do you want me to say that? Are we approving with or without the addition? Start and strongly encourage looking into, I think the heated sidewalks,
And keeping the additions.
and keeping those additions. Thank you.
Would you like to support her amended?
I will support that amended motion and second it.
Thanks, Becky.
We again have a
It's probably
motion.
not my role, but.
It's all right.
You know.
You can put words in my mouth. I'm good.
We do have a motion and support. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the Pennsylvania Park Walkway project with the additions and with the additions or without the additions, however, we strongly encourage the city to approve them with the two additions, as well as looking at the potential of heated sidewalks.
There you go.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks for coming, Tim. That was.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, thanks, Gary.
Jennifer, did you have closing?
Oh, my goodness, I do. I'm so sorry. I have big news. Please, sorry, Justin, you'll have to sit down. Okay. I wanted to announce that we have proudly hired Amy Tweeten to become our new downtown director. And she will be taking over for Becky when Becky retires at the end of the month. So Amy will be here on March 25th. For those of you who don't know, Amy was our former city planner, and we're excited to have her back and in this new role, working closely with the Downtown Management Board and the city of Petoskey as well. And in addition, we all want to thank Becky for, how many years is it, Becky?
19 and coming.
19 and some change, yes. And I would like to invite all of you to a retirement party for Becky on March 20th from 5:30 to 7:30 at Palette Bistro. Invitations will be coming, but of course, all of you are invited. So put it on your calendars now. March 20th.
After our next board meeting.
Thank you. Tim, we would love for you to be there. Justin, we'd love for you to be there. Please. And invite others in the community as well.
Yeah.
Please invite the city council.
Yes, on the list, guaranteed.
3:30.
5:30.
happy hour starts at 4.
Jennifer, I also need to add that with my acceptance of the role of executive director of Bayview Association, it means I need to resign from the Downtown Management Board. So I am apologetic about that because I was really enjoying the role, but so my March will be my last month on the board. So thank you.
Happy for you and
Yes,
bad for us.
Ditto. Yes. Congratulations on your new role. So, John, Mr. Mayor.
Since I have the responsibility of basically taking to council names of people that would be on the board. I've talked to Jennifer about a very good candidate, but now we're gonna end up with another candidate. And we're not sure if the person we're talking to is a go or not. If there is somebody that you feel, you guys know who's downtown. You feel somebody that would really be good for this board. Please get in touch with me, okay?
John, you're right.
I think one other thing is, if there is somebody that lives in downtown, I think, wasn't it in the past that we had 8,500?
I think it's 100.
Yeah,
Yeah, so if there's somebody that you feel lives downtown. Would be a great asset to this board. That's another possibility of a way to look at it as well. So. I think the world of you guys. I think I've appointed everybody but Robin. If you have some interest, know somebody, please help me out on this because I want somebody real positive like all of you guys are. And I want somebody that is a team player like you guys are. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that reminder. Then we ask, let's put it out to the world.
Okay.
Anybody else? Any other new business?
I'd like to say one thing. April Saunders did this parking piece. I don't know if you've seen this yet. She took it to Kiwanis. People were just amazed and said, oh my gosh, this should really help with parking, with people understanding the parking process. I don't know, maybe next meeting or you can bring this to the next meeting or get copies of this. This is outstanding on the parking locations. Where does the money go? It's just a real great 3-page sheet that she did. And I just want to compliment. I don't know if you had any part in this, Becky,
A little bit, but
but
Yeah,
it's outstanding. And the people in Kiwanis were going, oh gosh, this is really great. So I'm trying to pass it out to people. So
I would add to that, that's where you have gotten by creating this new structure and adding these new staff people. You have people heading a marketing department and a parking department that now have time and energy and creativity and can focus on these things. So you should be seeing more and more and more of that as time goes on, so.
Becky, did you get that sent out to the board?
Sure.
I think that would be.
you know the one I mean.
I know the one you mean. I just don't have a pen and,
Oh, that's good.
okay.
I got it.
Oh, okay, pens coming from everywhere. She'll be pleased that it was brought up and acknowledged.
Okay. We had the other one a bit before.
Thank you all. Anything else? Okay, I would like to call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
She's a school restaurant.
That might be, and she's able to spend more time she has the business. I was thinking they'd be like the back. Real estate, you know, that maybe have real estate.
I don't know. I almost said that, but
And she runs that business and she really wants to thrive, so I
Okay.
would think that's a good one. Yeah. Yeah, right.
Very too.
Yeah, yeah.
I gotta get better at this.
My heart. Oh, I know, I just got.
Is that all it is?
I don't know. Well, we can play.
I was really.
Yeah, that's.
You already told me that.
Yeah.
Frozen in like yours, you're day ago.
It's just, I have trouble answering the question, so everything on the application, there's a page and a half typed up.
Wow. I've said it before. It's talking about.
Oh, okay. Okay, all right, I'll stop in there too. It's nice that it's reading with names. It is, because you know what, who knows?
yeah.
People come and go right now, so much more than they used to, and it's like, I just.
Well, there are lots of people with opinions. There are lots of people with opinions.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
No.
We seem to see that, don't we?
I know. Yes, yeah, really.
She mentioned Matt Myers.
Matt Meyer?
Yeah.
She's great. It was. Okay, so it's good.
And she also mentioned George Burris.
Barbara Kyle. Who was there? Finance director. Before that was Mike Spence. This is out of town for the first time.
I'm not making any decision. You know what, I have a sauce, go slow to get it right.
To be the kind of place that someone like me wants to come back.
Are you glad about it?
You got it, so.
I think, you know, what we can do with this, you know, like I was on
No, but you told me about it.
Personality.
Okay.
But you're looking at why this.
She knows city, so
Yeah.
it's-
So I can pull up this zip on. It came out of-
I love looking here, right? I leave mine there, thank you.
I even leave the tag on sometimes, you know, what the hell. You know there's a tag on.
Mine, the lights.
I'll take it off when I get